Welcome to Debt Free in 30, the show where every week we talk to industry experts about debt, money, and personal finance. I'm Doug Hoyes. We've had a number of shows where we've talked about issues specific to seniors. Our second show, we had Dr. Leanne Davies on talking about her work with seniors and all the debt problems they had. We've touched on it with a few other experts as well. What we haven't talked about is the other end of the spectrum. What happens? What are the issues, the money issues, the personal finance issues related to families, young people, teenagers, that age group? And so today we're going to talk about that. I've got a great expert on the line, so let's get started. Tell me, who are you, what do you do, and what book did you write?
Hi, Doug. My name is Robin Taub. I am a chartered professional accountant by training, and currently I'm working as a financial literacy consultant, speaker, and blogger. And what that means is I help my clients create financial literacy resources that help Canadians understand their personal finance and investing. And the resources range from blogs, speaking engagements, and as you mentioned, I wrote a book called A Parent's Guide to Raising Money Smart Kids.
Cool, and I've read the book, and I'm going to put notes in the show notes. I'll put links to how you can get that book, where you can get it. You can buy it as a hard copy, you can buy it as an ebook, and it's a great resource. But let me kind of play devil's advocate here. So I think everyone would acknowledge, yes, it's really important to raise kids who know about money and who are money smart, but is it really? I mean, isn't it kind of a waste of time trying to teach a 10-year-old kid about budgeting and credit cards when they don't have any money? I mean, isn't money something you can only learn about when you have money, and it's really best to learn by experience?
Okay, so let's start with your first question, which is why is it important to raise kids who know about money or who are money smart? So I think it's important not just for our sake as parents, but for the sake of our children. Because if we don't, there are consequences to both of us. So as parents, we might end up supporting our adult kids financially or bailing them out of a financial mess like an expensive divorce or bankruptcy, something you know a lot about. Mm-hmm. And that could even really take place at the expense of us, the parents. It could happen while we're trying to enjoy our retirement, and we might not even be able to afford to bail out our kids. So certainly we want our kids to be financially literate and financially independent. And then the consequences for our kids are also significant, because if they are not financially literate, they're going to be lacking a basic life skill, something they're going to need throughout every stage of their lives. And they can also start to develop bad habits like living beyond their means that become hard to break as they get older. And I'm sure you see this a lot. People who struggle with money, it spills into other areas of their lives, like their personal relationships and even their health. So I think it's really important. But to answer your other question, is it a waste of time to try to teach a 10-year-old about budgeting or credit cards when they don't have money? First of all, you want to start early and lay the foundation. So it's really important to do that in an age-appropriate way. So, and that's something that my book lays out is there's a chapter for each age, from young kids to preteens to teens to young adults. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure you're speaking to them about money topics that are appropriate for the stage that they're at. And you mentioned also, like, they don't even have money, but that's not even true, really, because 10-year-olds do have money from birthdays and holidays, and they might get an allowance from their parents, or they might do odd jobs to earn money. So they have some money, and they're going to be making these choices. And you want them, and I agree with what you said, that it's best for them to learn from, you do learn the best from your own experiences, and especially from mistakes that you make. So that's why it's so important to start when they're young, because that's when the stakes are low.
So what you're saying is, if we don't learn, there are consequences, and you kind of laid them out. They ripple through all the way through later into life. So, okay, I'll buy your argument that it's important to raise money smart kids, but is that hard to do? What are some of the challenges that you see in trying to raise what you call a money smart kid?
So it can be hard for most people, for a lot of people, especially if you're not good at it yourself. But if that's the case, it can also be an opportunity for you to learn too while you're teaching your kids. Someone like me or someone like you that has a financial background, that's a financial professional, it wasn't hard and it was very natural. But, the typical Canadian parents face challenges. And those challenges include a lack of knowledge, like they just don't even know what to discuss. They don't know how to approach it. Parents feel like they don't have the time. And sometimes they feel like they're lacking the opportunity to talk to their kids about money. So I try to recommend that you look for teachable moments. So an opportunity in your day-to-day lives as you go about your day-to-day family lives to build in a little money lesson. And again, for me, that came very naturally because I'm always sort of thinking about financial matters. And my husband's also a chartered professional accountant, so it wasn't something that we shied away from. And I think that was actually really good for my kids.
And so really what you're talking about then is, in addition to being a teacher, you're really being a role model as well. So, I mean, like you, I'm a parent. I've got 2 teenagers. I'm also married to a CPA, so that's kind of creepy. My theory is that the most important way I can teach my kids is to be a good role model. Instead of me giving them a lecture on proper money management, I would assume that being a good role model is the most important way that you can raise what you call money smart kids?
Absolutely. And that's actually the first chapter in my book is the importance of being a good financial role model for your kids, because actions do speak louder than words. And especially teenagers, like you and I both have, they're going to sniff out any kind of hypocrisy and they're going to call you out on it. So you cannot the old do what I say, not as I do, that is not going to fly. And you really have to, as they say, walk the talk. Like nobody's expected to be perfect, but you really do have to do your best to get your own financial house in order so that you can lead by example. And I'm sure, parents listening will agree that that's an important concept, being a good role model for your kids in a lot of different areas of your life. Personal finance is just one, but you want to set a good example in terms of, how you take care of yourself, your health, your relationships with people, your work ethic, all those things. Your kids are picking up these things by watching and listening and learning from you.
Yeah, you can't tell your kids it's bad to smoke cigarettes if you smoke.
Right.
It's just not going to work.
Exactly. And you can't tell your kids, to live within their means if they hear you and your spouse talking about, oh my God, how are we going to pay our bills or how are we going to pay off the credit card? They really do absorb a lot just by osmosis.
Do you think that money is a taboo topic in a lot of houses?
Yes, unfortunately.
And, why is that? I guess you just have to acknowledge it and get over it then. Is that the solution?
Yeah, it's an uncomfortable topic for a lot of people, and I think it can be uncomfortable if you're not doing well and you're struggling and you're not good at this. It's a little bit embarrassing to share that with your kids. It's also hard if you have a lot of money. I've spoken to groups of affluent Canadians, or I've spoken to wealth managers that work with affluent Canadians, and it can be an uncomfortable topic there as well because there's an abundance of resources. So, but the problem is that if you don't talk about it, you're depriving your kids of an opportunity to learn from you, their parents. And there's research that CPA Canada did that shows that teenagers who talk about money with their parents at home feel more optimistic and confident about their financial futures. And parents who are most successful teaching their kids, it's because they talk about it with them often. And, it's not an off-limits topic.
So you talk about talking about it. On page 5 of your book, you got a cartoon of a child asking her father, so how much money do you make?
Yeah.
Is that something that parents should be talking to their children about, or how do you address that question?
Right. So that's the reason why it's taboo often, because your parents are worried that they're going to get these sensitive or uncomfortable questions. So one is, how much do you make? Or another could be, do we have a mortgage, or how much is our mortgage? Or, my son used to ask my husband if he had a good quarter because he has his own business. So, I think, again, I said this earlier, age appropriate. So you got to take your child's age and maturity into account when you answer these questions. And you have to stress confidentiality because, yes, I'm encouraging openness and conversation, but these aren't things you want your kids to share with the rest of the world. These are private family matters to some degree. So you want to make sure that they understand that. And, I'm not sure that kids have as the need to know exactly how much you make or exactly how much your mortgage is. First of all, that's information. It's not their responsibility to make ends meet in the household, but you don't want to deny, you want to be honest with them. You don't want to deny their questions or their curiosity. So you can talk to them like in a more general range, like give them a range. So you could say people in my line of work or people that are CPAs, they make anywhere from this much when they graduate from university and start working, and then they work their way up. And the average in Canada, the average CPA in Ontario or in Canada makes this much. So you can talk about what a doctor might make depending if he is a specialist or not, or what the minimum wage is, or things like that. I mean, you can always talk about general concepts around earning, saving, spending, and donating money without divulging things that make you really uncomfortable. So,
well, and that makes sense. Yeah. So it has to be age appropriate. You've got to, explain to the child that this is information for the family, not to be broadcast on Twitter. And, and as a result, they can learn from it without being overburdened by it. That's very, very good advice. We're going to take a quick break here. I've got a lot more questions. So I will be right back. This is Debt Free in 30.
You're listening to Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
We're back on Debt Free in 30, and my guest today is Robin Taub, who is a chartered professional accountant, an educator, and the author of the book A Parent's Guide to Raising Money Smart Kids. We talked about younger kids before the break, so now let's talk about older kids. Robin, I believe in Canada that you have to be 18 years of age or older to obtain a credit card in your name. My question is, should you? Is that a good idea?
So yes, you have to be the age of majority. And even before that, you can get a supplementary card, let's say on your parents' credit card as a teenager. But then that, that is, any purchases made on that card, if it's a supplementary card, would just go onto your parents' account. But to have your own credit card, in Ontario, it's 18. And, okay, so the question is that a good idea? So credit cards, we all know, are very convenient and safer than carrying around cash. And there's other advantages, too, like, frequent flyer points and stuff like that you can earn if you use a credit card. The other thing is it lets you start to build a credit history. Which is important later on when you borrow money for, let's say, a house or a car. If you have a strong credit history, you will be able to negotiate a better interest rate. But the risks, there are risks with having a credit card, and it's really important to sit down with your child and make sure that they understand how a credit card works, like the basics, because you'd be surprised. Some of them are really naive. They don't understand that it's buy now, pay later, that you're actually borrowing money. Unless you sat down and showed them how credit card works when they were younger, they just may not know. So you want to just go over these basics, that you have, a credit limit that's predetermined, that you're not supposed to go over, that you have to pay, that, the amounts accumulate over the month, and then you have to pay one lump sum at the on the due date. And if you don't, then you're going to be paying compound interest at an extremely high rate. If you don't make your payments on time or you miss payments, there's going to be fees and penalties, and there's probably an annual fee involved with having a credit card. So all of those very basic things, they don't know, and they need to understand before they even think about getting a credit card. And obviously, if they do go out and get their own card, they should make sure that the limit is set extremely low so that they can't get into trouble by accident. And I think once they understand it, it's good experience for them. to use a credit card to see, how that credit card cycle works, the cutoff date, then you have like 3 weeks to pay it. And it's a good introduction to the real world of paying bills, as long as it's sort of done in a bit of a controlled environment where you're keeping an eye on it and you've kept the credit limit extremely low.
Do you worry about fraud when there's credit cards out there?
Sure I do. I mean, I've had my credit card compromised, my debit cards compromised. Probably it's happened to everyone at some time. The only, the thing that makes it a little riskier with teenagers is they overshare everything. They overshare their personal lives, and they also overshare their financial information. So, things like texting debit or credit card numbers or PINs or even taking like a picture of a credit card and posting that on social media. There's so many risky things. Kids are very trusting. Like I know my kids have told me that it's not unusual for someone to give them their own debit card and PIN if someone's going to buy fast food or something like that, and they're not going along with them, or someone will give their smartphone and passcode if somebody is going to Starbucks and they want to pay using their Starbucks app. So they're very naive and trusting in that way, and I think that in most cases it's probably okay, but I don't think it's a good practice to be getting into, and I think it's better to be safe than sorry when it comes to this stuff, because if your identity is stolen, if you're subject to fraud or identity theft, it can be a hassle to like clear your name and cancel everything and get everything sorted out. So you really want to be mindful of that. And I think there's just this tendency for kids to just be very out there with everything, and it's not smart when it comes to your money.
Yeah, and I guess it all comes back to what you said at the top of the show, that you have to look at things in an age-appropriate manner. And I'm not one of those guys who said, oh, well, you should never have a credit card then because something bad might happen. You can certainly choose never to have a credit card. That's fine. If you've made that choice, no problem. Use a debit card, use cash. But if you are going to use a credit card, and there are some reasons to use them, you laid them out, you've also got to be careful about it. And obviously posting them on social media is not the way to do it. Hey, look, I'm proud. I got my first credit card. Yeah, that's not what you want to do. No.
And, the other thing, too, like the best defense against fraud is, in addition to like safeguarding your PIN and always knowing where your card is and being careful, is reviewing your credit card and bank statements online. It's so easy to do. Most young people are very mobile, and all the banks now have these mobile apps where you can just log in and look at the activity in your accounts. And if you see something suspicious or weird, all you have to do is call the bank and notify them. And, the appropriate steps will be taken, whether you have to cancel your card and get a new one, or they're just going to investigate. So that's and I think that that's also a good step to being financially literate, because you're reviewing your transactions, you know where you stand, you know what your credit card balance is, like what you're going to owe at the end of that period. It's just another way to stay on top of your finances and prevent fraud or identity theft.
Yep, makes perfect sense. Well, those are some great ideas. I really appreciate you for joining me today. That was Robin Taub. She wrote a book, and I'm going to have all the notes on our website, but the book was called A Parent's Guide to Raising Money Smart Kids. It's got a lot of practical advice. You can go to our website at hoys.com and get all the links to that. Robin, thanks very much for being with me today.
Thanks, Doug.
We'll be right back here on Debt Free in 30.
You're listening to Debt Free in 30 with Doug Hoys. We'll be right back. You're listening to Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoys.
Welcome back. It's time for the 30-second recap of what we discussed today. My guest today was Robin Taub, author of A Parent's Guide to Raising Money Smart Kids, and she told us why raising money smart kids is important. She said you don't want your kids to develop bad money habits and start living beyond their means and have debt problems, because that's not good for young adults. As a parent, you want money smart kids so you don't end up having to bail them out if they have problems. How do you do that? Robin gave lots of examples, but it starts with being a good role model for your children. That's the 30-second recap of what we discussed today. So, what's my view on raising money smart kids? I agree with Robin, and I think every child is different, so there is no one-size-fits-all approach that will work in all cases, but I do believe that it's important that you don't excessively shelter your kids. We often learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. That's why I think it's important for young children to be exposed to financial decisions at an early age. Most kids have some money from an allowance or doing chores or from birthday gifts. Encourage them to think about where they want to spend their money, and that will teach them one of the most important money lessons there is. You can only spend $1 once. Once it's gone, so making a plan is essential at any age. That's our show for today. If you have a question you want answered on the show, or if you have any other comments, email us at dfi30@hoys.com. That's dfi30@hoys.com. Full show notes with links to everything we talked about are available on our website at hoys.com. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoys. That was Debt Free in 30.
Thanks for listening. This was Debt Free in 30.
Looking for information on budgeting, debt consolidation, credit counseling, debt management, and debt settlement? For unbiased advice, go to moneyproblems.ca, the website for Canadians with money problems who want money solutions. moneyproblems.ca